Boxing, why do you continue to waste my time? I just finished watching Vergil Ortiz versus Serhii Bohachuk. And let's just say it was a robbery. I definitely think Bohachuk beat Vergil Ortiz tonight. Now, Boxingego, the best in the business here, and it's not even close. It's bittersweet because as a fight, it was a very fun fight to watch. But who cares about that when in the end, the right person does not win, and boxing politics simply get in the way. So it doesn't really matter if you enjoyed the fight when at the end of the day, the right person doesn't win. And it's like going to court and then the bad guy wins and the bad guy gets released. Like all this detective work and all the evidence. And then based on a technicality, the bad guy gets to walk, but you know he's guilty of it. You know, it's a similar analogy. Or let's say you slept with a celebrity. And normally you would brag about this. Like, man, I was with Halle Berry. I was with this chick or this chick, you know. But what if you slept with that celebrity and then they burned you and gave you chlamydia? Then really changes the dynamics of everything. So again, great fight followed by some bullshit. So it kind of cancels each other out. Just like if you slept with the celebrity chick, yeah, that's cool. But then she burned you. So this is definitely not this momentous occasion. Now, again, it was a good fight. Serhii Bohachuk entered as the WBC interim champion, and he should have left with this. This was definitely a robbery. The scorecards indicated a close fight. You could say that the fight was somewhat close, but here's where it gets chippy. There were two separate rounds where Serhii Bohachuk dropped Vergil Ortiz. Not one, but two. So you're already, as a fighter, you're at a deficit because you have to war back and battle back from 2 10-8 rounds. The DAZN commentary was bloody awful. It was atrocious, which I'll get to because I give you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, the only good, was that it was a good fight and it was entertaining. The rest was bad and ugly, right? So Serhii Bohachuk having 2 10-8 rounds, that's hard to bounce back from. When you get dropped multiple, like Andre Ward, right? He had a close fight with Sergey Kovalev of Russia, right? And you had people who would say off of one knockdown, he never was hurt throughout the rest of the fight, Andre Ward. But when it's a black fighter like Andre Ward, you've seen that people are saying, oh, this was a robbery. You know, Kovalev really won. That's off of one knockdown, despite all of the great work that Andre Ward did. And I think, and I was at the fight live, I covered both Ward-Kovalev fights. Ward won the first fight too. He got dropped and people sensationalized this. This was 2 10-8 rounds, which again, the more times you get knocked down, the more of a deficit, the more of a hole you have dug. Now, post-fight, Vergil Ortiz was definitely capping. He was being interviewed and they asked him about the knockout or the knockdowns. And he said, oh, I don't think they were knockdowns. And then he started saying something like, I must have tripped on his foot or some ish. And then he's like, whatever, I'm not going to make excuses. And then he kind of deflected and changed the subject. So there was an easy solution here. You know, when Gervonta Davis knocks out Frank Martin, and then they get the little monitor that all big boxing broadcasts have, and then they show the instant replay with the fighter who just won, or sometimes even the fighter that lost, and they ask that fighter, so let's say Gervonta Davis knocks out Frank Martin, you show him the monitor, the iPad or the monitor or whatever, show him knocking out and say, walk us through this knockout of Frank Martin. And then Tank will be like, man, I seen he was getting tired, hit him with the left uppercut, and I seen he was hurt, so boom, I followed up his knockout. It was pretty, right? They could have done that here. when they're going over the knockdowns, because I don't let people insult my intelligence. I'm far too intelligent for that to happen. So if I watched the fight in real time and I was like, that's a knockdown in round 1, they didn't count it initially. And then in round 5, the bell rang, and for whatever reason, the bout was called to a halt. So I'm like, maybe there's a puddle on the canvas, like a slipping hazard, so they need to wipe the mat. I didn't know what was going on, and there was this commotion, and I was like, what's going on? They later revealed that at the start of round 5, they finally went back and rewatched it and did the instant replay, because some fights and some commissions are doing instant replay now, just like basketball or whatever, and they reversed it, and then they now decided that round 1 was in fact a knockdown. And they went to Robert Garcia, who is Vergil Ortiz's trainer, and they notified both teams, hey, that droppage in the first round, that was actually scored a knockdown. So now it was a 10-8 round, right? So Ortiz's team and Bohachuk's team, they both knew that that was a deficit. So that was a 10-8 round for Bohachuk, and it was a 10-8 round against Vergil Ortiz. And then the fight continued, right? Then there was another moment. I don't have the round offhand. It was not that much after that. Let's say 6 or 7, where Vergil Ortiz is getting too aggressive, and then he got caught, and then he got right back up, and he was like, no, and he's trying to plead, but you're not going to tell the referee what he's seen, and the referee is called to monitor and make executive decisions. So Vergil again tried to protest the knockdown and say no, but it was too late. The ref seen it. It was a true knockdown. So there's 2 knockdowns in the fight by Serhii Bohachuk. Mind you, Vergil Ortiz had no knockdowns in the fight. Let's get to the ugly. DAZN has the worst commentary in all of boxing. I've said that. I mean it. I believe it. It needs work. I would throw a grenade and then just start from scratch. It's terrible. It's terrible. And this is the ugly, because it just makes it so hard to even watch and listen to what's being said. They were glazing Vergil Ortiz. Anytime he would land a shot, they'd be like, ooh, ah, and like oohs and ahs and screaming. And Bohachuk was doing some really strong work. He has like, he almost looks like he has a hunchback. So he's like really a tight frame, and he was sending some nasty uppies and rights. He had a very good jab. None of this was even being talked about. So when you had these rounds where Bohachuk was responding very well and boxing very well and landing shots, it was almost like nothing was going on unless Vergil Ortiz was doing something. Now, I know you guys see on the screen the pictures of Vergil Ortiz's face. Now, I'm an advanced watcher of this sport. I'm a reporter in the sport of boxing. So for me, I understand that the face doesn't always tell the tale. But for this particular fight, it does tell the tale. You look at Serhii Bohachuk's face, his face was relatively clean after the fight. And it's not just about the facial test, but I think it actually mattered and made sense. This is Serhii Bohachuk at the end of the fight, and that really kind of represented his boxing and his defense, and he wasn't getting hit with a lot of these shots flush like the DAZN commentators were making it out to be. Vergil Ortiz was like getting hit with big rights. Like there was in the second half of the fight, Bohachuk said boom, boom, and landed like 2 in the space of like 30 seconds, 2 big rights on Vergil when he was by the ropes and things like that. And I don't even think we heard a peep from the DAZN commentators about that. And they were the best shots of that round, to the point where it was already kind of a close round, let's say, or a competitive round. That should have won Bohachuk the round. The DAZN commentators were making it sound like Vergil Ortiz had a clean sweep in the championship rounds, and I'm here to tell you he did not. He didn't win like the last 3-4 rounds tight. It was a very contested fight. It was competitive. There were moments where Bohachuk, he looked like he got buzzed a little bit, but his recuperative powers and him being a big, strong, and durable 154, he was eating it. And then he just got right back to the game plan. And then it was being sensationalized by the DAZN commentators. Throughout the telecast, they were like, oh, Bohachuk, he's hurt. Ah, and making this big deal like Bohachuk was on his way out. And then the fight goes the distance. So if you listen to Boxingego on my watch parties, or if you follow me on X when I was doing my round by round tweets, I was just calling what I was seeing. I hate when commentators, Tim Bradley does this a lot too on ESPN, where he'll make it sound like somebody's on their last leg about to get knocked out, and then the person never gets knocked out. So you're doing too much. You know, if the person really was going to get knocked out, then why didn't it happen? You could tell that the promoter of Serhii Bohachuk was upset because he kind of jumped on the mic when Bohachuk said something. He was smiling, and after he got robbed, he was just like, everybody knows what happened tonight. The world's seen what happened tonight. Tom Loeffler, being his promoter, he doesn't like his fighter losing his title in that fashion where he should have won. And he was like, man, everyone's seen it. He got hit and dropped 2 times. Look at his face. Look at my fighter's face. The world knows that was some BS. And I agree. And that's the ugly. You get a good fight, a great fight, a fight of the year contender, but it's marred with controversy. Now, to add insult to injury, Turkey was at this card, Turkey of Riyadh season. And pre-fight, they interviewed him, and he says that he hopes to, if Vergil Ortiz is successful, then he wants to make Terrence Crawford versus Vergil Ortiz, and then William Zepeda, another Golden Boy fighter, versus Shakur Stevenson. So little brother, big bro, in terms of Shakur and Terrence versus Zepeda and Vergil if he wins. Now, this whole thing looks corrupt, and it looks like a setup because Bohachuk really won the fight. But that's the problem with these public people were like, oh, Turkey's saving boxing. Is he? Because now it looks like some type of corruption, if we're being real, that you already declared you wanted Crawford versus Vergil Ortiz. So seeing how no one got knocked out and then the fight was competitive, they just gave it to the guy that they want to push towards Crawford. But I'm here to let you know it will backfire like it always does in boxing. Just like when Pacquiao lost to Jeff Horn. The Crawford-Jeff Horn fight wasn't really a big fight, but if Pacquiao won and then fought Crawford, it would have been a huge fight at that time. And that's the thing. You got so many people trying to play God with these judging and the scorecards and doing some BS where we all watch Vergil Ortiz lose, right? And because there's another fight that they feel is bigger, people are getting in the way and politics are getting in the way. And then the rightful person, Bohachuk, loses. And, you know, it doesn't really do anything to help Vergil Ortiz or the fighter who gets gifted the win. Because I'm here to let you know, I have close to zero real true interest in Terrence Crawford versus Vergil Ortiz after tonight's fight. So they can do this doubleheader card. I'm really not even interested in it. I'll watch it just because it's my job, but good luck getting people to buy tickets and shell out money and getting people to make this a big event and pay-per-view. As far as I'm concerned with that showing, it's not. And it's no shade to Terrence Crawford because, you know, but actually it's the same thing. Terrence Crawford had a tough fight with Madrimov. Some people are saying that he even lost or it was a draw. And then people are saying that with Bohachuk. So you put these two people who recently moved to 54 and you're going to try to make a fight. So yeah, they have some names, but they're both coming off performances where people are thinking that the other guy could have won or it was close. So it's just not going to be this big monstrous event, you know? Furthermore, off of what I've seen, Vergil Ortiz, I don't see him beating Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford will probably stop and batter Vergil Ortiz because the main problem, Vergil Ortiz, he almost fights like ADHD or something. Like, you know, those kids that have these hyper attention deficit disorders and they have this excessive amount of energy and like jumping off the walls and stuff. That's how he's fighting. And boxing is the sweet science. Every time he was caught or hurt or rocked with the shot or down, he's trying to like load up on every shot and swing and throw fastballs. That just made Crawford is just, he's 41, I think, fights into his career. It's just, that's right up Crawford's alley. Madrimov, he was not as aggressive in spots, and he was feinting and using some movement and like kind of some herky jerkiness. So that's what made that fight. But Vergil Ortiz just loading up. Crawford has short shots, clean, crispy shots. Crawford just going to shell up, catch and shoot, and clip Vergil Ortiz. You can't be doing that wild man stuff versus Terrence Crawford. In fact, not just Crawford. I've always felt this, but put it on wax. Vergil Ortiz, I don't see him beating Jaron Boots Ennis either. He just gets mad sloppy and overly aggressive and overly zealous. That's what I seen all night. All night. Even his own corner was pretty much saying it. Like, he's loading up on every shot, and it's like boxing works like that. The more you're looking for a knockout, the greater the chance of you getting knocked out is, you know? It's just like looking for love. If I just went through a breakup and I need to find a girl. I need a girl. You know, you're on your P. Diddy. I need a girl to ride. I need a girl. Right? And you're so desperate, you're going to end up probably messing with a bunch of the wrong chicks in pursuit of love. True love, I think, is more organic and more natural. And then you just meet somebody. Maybe they start out as your friend and then you grow to love them and it just happens, right? But if you're seeking that, you're on all the dating websites, swiping right and stuff like that, then I really feel like you're going to have to go through a lot of the wrong situations before you maybe find love, if you even find it. That's the same thing in boxing. You're looking to impress. You're looking for a knockout. The more you try to do these things, the more likely you'll get the opposite effect. So if Vergil even attempts to fight Terrence Crawford like he fought Bohachuk, he probably going to sleep because he was just too wild, and there was weird things. Like it wasn't a great performance to me. He showed heart, but I don't overly credit and praise heart. You're supposed to show heart if you've been fighting your whole life, right? It was like almost like he had a fractured nose or broken nose or something, because Bohachuk was landing some great uppercuts. Because when I was watching Vergil, and this was like round 1 or 2, like early on in the fight, I kept seeing Vergil Ortiz like sniffle, like he was trying to clear his sinus passages or some his nasal passages, like, and he kept doing it throughout the fight. So I think that was probably from a punch, because I don't necessarily recall that in a previous Vergil Ortiz fight. So definitely not the showing that you would want as a calling card or an audition tape for Terrence Crawford. Again, I study this sport of boxing. Crawford was in a very tough fight, but styles make fights. And Bohachuk looked slow to me, and I still think he won. Bohachuk is like, throws a lot of punches and he kind of shells up. He just had a good game plan, but it didn't look like anything that was crazy. Like Madrimov was doing some high level kind of technical shifting and, you know, some upper body movement. He was more of a moving target. So I can even understand why Terrence Crawford had issues with a 300+ amateur guy like Madrimov, more so than Vergil Ortiz, if he is who Golden Boy has advertised him as. And then you fought a kind of a straight up and down, come forward Ukrainian guy in Bohachuk, and you really lost. He tattered your face up, all that like tough man stuff and trying to blaze people. That might have worked at 140. It might have worked at 47. But again, like you guys are seeing, Boxingego, the best in the business, and it's not even close. I told you, weight classes matter. Weight matters. The weight classes exist for a reason. Vergil Ortiz is trying to fight Like he fighting Mauricio Herrera, a guy he don't respect his power, and a guy who's like really smaller than him, right? Or Samuel Vargas, or one of these fights at 147. You fighting Bohachuk, who looked big. He looked big. He was a champion. He was confident. His defense was better than people gave him credit for. And you just trying to look how big he looks. You see what I'm saying? He's taller than you. And you sitting up here trying to fight him like Mad Max and just like try to gun him down and blaze him. And he was having some success. He did catch and buzz Bohachuk. And that's the thing with the scoring. A lot of people don't know about boxing. Like scoring, from a scoring perspective, Bohachuk had a great poker face. He never was knocked down. Just because the commentators are screaming, you can't disregard everything that happened in the round because you believe he's so hurt because he wasn't going down, and he was immediately firing back and landing good shots on Vergil Ortiz. So with 2 10-8 rounds in favor of Bohachuk and him being the champion, I really feel like he was robbed. And boxing is full of fake mofos. Here's why. I noticed this. When it's certain fighters, let's say Canelo, and Canelo has his fan base. His base will be like, oh, Canelo didn't lose to whoever, Erislandy Lara. You got to do more to beat the champ. This is what they say. You didn't take the belt from the champ. You got to do more to beat the champ. Won't wompty. But then they only say that when it's convenient. When Bohachuk is the champ and you wanted Vergil Ortiz to win, they don't use that same logic of, hey, the champion entered the fight with the belt. Did Vergil Ortiz really do enough to take a champion's belt? And I'm saying no. But again, now that logic doesn't apply. But then if this is another guy who happened to be the champion that really should have lost, they say, oh, you got to do more to beat the champion. So the bottom line is Bohachuk was right. The world's seen what it was. I don't see Vergil Ortiz beating Boots or beating Bud. And Turkey might have to recalibrate because I don't know how much of a demand there will be for Vergil Ortiz versus Terrence Crawford. Yes, Vergil Ortiz has power, but again, just like Crawford, his power looks more manageable at 54. He never dropped Bohachuk. He couldn't finish Bohachuk. And it's funny, like Boxingego always say, DAZN was bragging about Vergil Ortiz having a 100% knockout ratio the second he fought somebody who's not a career 140 pounder like Thomas Delorme. Notice that knockout ratio all of a sudden, that 20 fights in a row, that just ends right tonight it ends. When you fight somebody real, somebody who has some, a chin, somebody who has some size, somebody who has a jab, somebody who has some skills, somebody who's been boxing their whole life, it just all of a sudden ends. But then you look at the clever matchmaking from Golden Boy, just like Zurdo Ramirez. Zurdo Ramirez, he had like 1,000 fights in a row where he won, 60 fights or whatever his record was. The moment he fights Bivol, he looked horrible and lose to Bivol. Just like Vergil Ortiz, I'm not going to say he looked horrible. Like Vergil, he didn't look horrible like Zurdo Ramirez versus Bivol, but all that knockouts was out the window. Let me know what you guys think of this robbery.